call to order the May meeting of the University of Minnesota Board of Regents. Good morning, everyone. Thank you to those joining us in the boardroom and via live stream today. I will note that we have at least Regent Mary Davenport, who is attending by Zoom, and we have no absent regents. So let's turn right to our business. We will begin today with the introduction of two new university senior leaders, Ryan Schmiesing, our new Vice President for Strategic Initiatives, and John Morris, our new University of Minnesota Foundation President and CEO. President Cunningham, would you please join me at the podium and to introduce our new senior leaders?
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Chair Mayron. This morning, I'm just delighted to introduce two extraordinary leaders to the University of Minnesota. First, let me welcome Ryan Schmiesing, who joined the U of M on March 31st as our inaugural Vice President for Strategic Initiatives. Ryan, if you want to join me here at the podium. It's hard to believe Ryan started here just 6 weeks ago, given how much he's already accomplished. Ryan brings a wealth of experience to Minnesota, having spent the past 3 decades serving in leadership roles at The Ohio State University and in government. As Vice President of Strategic Initiatives, Ryan plays a primary role in advancing multiple cross-cutting initiatives that elevate our university's shared mission and goals. Since he arrived on campus, Ryan has been actively involved in supporting our Maroon, Gold, and Bold system-wide strategic plan, partnering with the steering committee and members of our broader community. Ryan is also collaborating and coordinating with senior leaders, governance, along with academic and administrative units to identify and advance key system-wide priorities. His leadership and his expertise have been on full display since he arrived on campus, and I so look forward to what we can accomplish together. Please join me in welcoming Ryan to the University of Minnesota. Around the horseshoe is the way it works.
Welcome, Ryan. It's
So,
good to have you here. Thank you.
oh, we do one all together? Sure, we can do that. Oh. Next, it is my pleasure to introduce John Morris, who joined the University of Minnesota on May 1 as the Chief Executive Officer and President of the University of Minnesota Foundation. John, please join us here. Thank you. This is a homecoming of sorts for John, who previously led the regional major gift team at UMF before moving on to senior leadership roles at other institutions. John is uniquely positioned to guide the foundation and guide its next comprehensive fundraising campaign after having served in leadership roles at some of the country's most notable land-grant universities for the past 20 years. He most recently served as the vice president at the Texas A&M Foundation. As CEO and president of the foundation, John will be responsible here for leading the university's development enterprise, as well as ensuring oversight of the foundation's 2 subsidiaries in real estate and investment management. Based on a wealth of experience and expertise that John brings to this position, I am incredibly confident that UMF will continue to thrive, further positioning our university for extraordinary success for generations to come. Please join me in welcoming John back to the University of Minnesota. First.
Our second item is approval of the minutes and consent report. The draft minutes from the March and April meetings are included in your docket. The consent report includes gifts, the report of the All University Honors Committee, and the report of the Naming Committee. Is there anyone who would like to ask a question, make a comment, or separate an item out to be voted on separately before I invite a motion to approve the minutes and the consent report? Is there, hearing none, seeing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes and consent report?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Thank you. The motion is approved. Next, we will hear the report of President Cunningham.
Thank you, Chair Mayeron and members of the board. We just wrapped up another very exciting academic semester here at the University of Minnesota, and I have a number of system-wide updates that I would like to share with you today.
How dare you cut a deal with Northwind?
I'm sorry, I'm going to call this morning.
While Palestinian families are mutilated. Dotan Grenadin has been in a holding cell for 6 weeks without charges. How dare you allow your students to be federally kidnapped? You pigs are all the same. Fuck your bullshit neutrality.
I'm sorry, if you do not stop this, we will move for recess.
Deal with Northwind.
I'm going to call a short recess. Thank you very much. Those who would like to join me in the back room. Thank you. The recess is over. President Cunningham, if you would like to proceed.
Yes. Thank you, Chair Mayron. I do have a number of system-wide updates I'd like to share with you today. The first regards managing our financial resources. I want to begin by acknowledging the fact that we are all operating in a time of tremendous financial uncertainty, as our presentation yesterday to the board reflected. We have a rapidly evolving federal landscape coupled with potential changes in state funding. This has led to increased anxiety and fear among many of members of our university community. The broader pressures facing higher ed have created serious challenges for colleges and universities across the country, and our institution is certainly not immune. All that said, I would like to thank our university community for their support, their leadership, and their resilience as we navigate these complex times together. My leadership team and I have been actively preparing for a wide range of financial scenarios with a shared commitment of stewarding our resources and our mission wisely. It is not in our best interest to have draconian reductions based on speculation. However, there is a strong possibility that a time may come for us to look at hiring pauses or other restrictions, spending cuts, or other austerity measures, as many universities across the country have already done. As a university, we want to be as prepared as possible. At this time, we will not be enacting any central pauses in hiring, spending, or other actions. However, we have asked, and in a memo that went out a few weeks ago from VP Golden, our university community, to take a prudent approach in the posting of new positions, hiring on current open positions, and other spending at the local level for decision-making where local leaders know best the urgency and the importance of those positions to their mission, as opposed to central, broad pauses. If at some point we need to adjust this guidance or consider other fiscal actions, we'll consult with members of the university community and certainly the board to the greatest extent possible. Now more than ever, we are being called on to take a measured and thoughtful approach that is not reactionary to fiscal spending and planning. While we cannot predict what tomorrow will bring, we do know that our university is on solid footing today. Intentional planning, stewardship, and preparation now will help ensure we remain financially strong. I'll move next to system-wide strategic planning. Later in today's board meeting, you will hear more about the planning process. We've had tremendous engagement across our 5 campuses in recent months, with thousands of students, faculty, and staff offering their insights on the future of the university. Chancellor Nees and Dean Aline will provide more details on our progress so far and how members of our university community can continue to engage in this important process this summer. Moving on to economic impact, you will also be hearing more today about the university's economic impact. As president, I am so very proud of the fact that our university has such a strong national reputation with global impact that extends across the continents. But I also have deep admiration for the way our students, faculty, staff, and alumni prioritize the North Star state. Our work is reflected in 87 counties, and we remain steadfast to our commitment to building a stronger, healthier, and more prosperous Minnesota for generations to come. That commitment spans more than 170 years, and over time, the university has cemented its role as one of Minnesota's most powerful economic engines. This is certainly reflected in our latest economic impact study, and I'm excited for you to learn more about that later this morning. Next, I want to move to some updates on our provost search. We have, and to the status of our national search for our next executive vice president and provost. We've made tremendous progress since my last update at the March board meeting. The search committee has conducted interviews with candidates selected from a highly qualified pool of applicants. They have recommended 4 candidates who later participate in interviews with key leaders and stakeholders on campus over the past 2 weeks. I will look forward to bringing you an appointment for your review and action at a later meeting, and anticipate we will have a new provost in place this summer. Many thanks to Dean Sarah DeWalt and Executive Vice President Greg Goldman for their leadership as co-chairs, and to all the members of the search committee for this work on this important search. Moving on next to an update on our Executive Vice President for Health. As discussed last December, I am continuing to work towards the hiring of an acting Executive Vice President for Health who can provide oversight of the university's clinical practice and operations for physicians, the Clinical and Surgery Center, and the medical school. While the university's expertise is exceptionally strong, as we talked about this morning, and interdisciplinary approaches are in place for success, an acting Executive Vice President for Health will bring expertise that will be essential to owning and operating and our general business operations and financial feasibility of our next steps. This person will also be able to represent the university with authority from me in the ongoing discussions around the Academic Health Center and in our work with the strategic facilitator that you met this morning. I look forward to providing the Board of Regents and our broader university community with this update shortly. Finally, I would like to close out my president's report by recognizing all of our tremendous students who are graduating this semester. More than 13,000 students across our 5 campuses will earn a degree from the University of Minnesota this semester, which is remarkable. Systemwide, our university is hosting 26 commencement ceremonies. I'll see some of you at those this weekend. Over the past several weeks, I've been able to engage with many of these students, learning more about their future plans and how the University of Minnesota helped shape who they are today. This morning, you heard from our health committee and chancellors on the incredible placement rates our students have, how they move to having a job out of our educational opportunity here at rates in the 90s and even sometimes at the 100 levels of their programs. We indeed are helping our students prepare for the future. I know their academic journey has not always been easy. Each and every one of them has encountered a fair share of obstacles along the way, but what makes graduation season so very special is when challenges were thrown their way, they persevered. Their resilience is demonstrated by this year's graduates is reflected not only in the classroom, but in their research labs and in the field. Their commitment to excellence is inspiring for all of us, and I think we remarked today even on why it is indeed why we are here and what we do. Their impact beyond our campus walls will be unparalleled, and they truly define what makes the University of Minnesota such a special place. So with that, with my congratulations to this season's graduates, I thank you for your time and attention, and this concludes my president's report.
Thank you very much, President Cunningham. Turning to my report, I would like to highlight some of the ways in which my fellow regents have engaged across the system since our March meeting. But before I do that, I just want to mark the special day it is for several of us on the board. It was exactly 6 years ago today that myself and Regent Kenyanya and Regent Davenport were elected to the Board of Regents. So we began at approximately 11:30 a.m. 6 years ago today, right in the middle of a board meeting, which hopefully that this year will not be how this is going to work. The legislature is yet to act, but we're hopeful that they certainly will do so before the end of the session on May 19th. So it's a big day. All right. So turning to my report and talking about how Regents have engaged across the system since our March meeting, first of all, Regents participated in 2 engagement visits that also included listening sessions, which wrapped up our pilot this academic year. On March 20, several Regents toured the College of Design on the Twin Cities campus and then hosted a listening session at Kaufman Memorial Union. On April 10, Regents heard from faculty, staff, and students outside the Perch Dining Center and in focus sessions held during a visit to the Rochester campus. I want to thank everyone involved in planning the visits in those listening sessions. I want to thank the community at large for coming to those listening sessions. And it was just a great opportunity to hear directly from members of our community, and that is so valuable to us as we conduct our work. Several Regents participated in the annual Association of Governing Boards National Conference on Trusteeship in Chicago. Those Regents heard from national experts in higher education governance on many topics facing the universities and learned about recommended best practices. They also connected with their trustee colleagues from many of our fellow Big Ten institutions. And finally, in mid-April, a group of Regents participated in Crookston's campus reaffirmation of accreditation review with the Higher Learning Commission. Congratulations to Chancellor Holtz-Claus and all involved in preparing for that review process. I know all my colleagues around the horseshoe here continue to be impressed by the depth and breadth of our great institution. Being able to experience the physical places and hear from the talented people who deliver on this university's mission is truly remarkable. I would also like to acknowledge the president and her administration for the unwavering work that they have engaged in to address these very and highly uncertain and unprecedented times. She has empowered university leaders to monitor and respond to changes in the federal landscape while adapting to changing conditions and remaining steadfast to the university's mission and vision. Thank you, President Cunningham. Thank you to all of senior leaders and others here in the audience, streaming and community-wide for their incredibly hard work and devotion to these very difficult times. As we reach the end of the spring semester, this time of year always feels like a celebratory time. Just driving to campus today, the campus is so beautiful and is just reeking with celebration and beauty. And so it is wonderful through the various ceremonies that we are about to engage in to highlight and recognize the tremendous accomplishments of our students, faculty, and staff during our annual recognition ceremony, which we held yesterday, and then, of course, with the commencements that are coming up. What a great reminder of the incredible talent we have across the university community. And it was a delight yesterday to honor them and to continue in that process in the week or so. And in that regard, just so you know, Regents are participating in more than 25 commencement ceremonies across the system to confer degrees. Congratulations to our class of 2025. Next, I'd like to announce the appointment of the nominating committee. As required by our bylaws, the chair of the board appoints 3 regents to serve on the nominating committee in odd-numbered years at this May meeting. This year's committee will be chaired by Regent Verhalen and will include Regents Tad Johnson and Mary Turner, all regents that will be continuing with the board. To provide maximum flexibility to the board and in alignment with our bylaws, the nominating committee will begin their work and provide their report at our annual meeting in June. If I am still chair for the board at that time, my intention is to move to suspend the bylaws and to delay the actual election of our new officers until the July meeting when new regents will hopefully be seated. That way, our 4 new regents can join the 8 of you who will continue on the board to select our new leaders. If I am not here in June, then the election can move forward as set out in the bylaws in June. And finally, as a fun aside, in fact, today marks the 86th anniversary of the adoption of our current Regents seal, which is behind here. And that concludes my comments. And at this time, we will move on with the agenda. Item number 5 is to receive and file reports, which includes the virtual forum comments and the annual review of the president's delegations. Please note these items in your docket materials. For our next item, we will hear the annual update on Native American Affairs. I would like to welcome Senior Advisor to the President for Native American Affairs, Karen Diver, to the presenters table. Once you arrive, please proceed. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Mayor and members of the board. I am absolutely delighted to be here with you again for my annual update. Just a reminder of why do I present separately from all of the other portfolios that are going on. It's because tribal nations are sovereign nations. They're concurrent jurisdictions within Minnesota. Our work here is because of the political status of tribal governments and the citizenry on behalf of their citizenry, and that guides our relationship here with the University of Minnesota. So it was a good year last year. We have an awful lot to report to you. The American Indian Studies PhD, much asked for and long awaited, kicked off its first cohort with 33 applicants with 5 admitted. Absolutely exciting to be able to finally implement this. It's been asked for 30 years. We were the very first American Indian Studies department in the country. And then just kind of didn't grow over time, and didn't think about a PhD program. And so all of our students were actually going through American Studies. So you could see from the number of applicants that it was much as anticipated. Stabilizing American Indian Studies faculty, there's been a lot of American Indian Studies faculty movement across the whole country and Canada too as well. So we had some of ours move on, quickly replace them, and have some hires coming forward. And this is on the Twin Cities campus. That is also true with the Duluth campus. Our enrollment was maintained stably this year. We didn't see growth, but we didn't see loss either. So I think the Native American Promise tuition program, also the state investment in tuition and fee waiver, and how we were able to supplement that with Native American Promise really reduced some of the feelings of instability and unaffordability, although we will continue to make progress towards the full cost of attendance as requested by tribal leaders. I do want to make note that the Native American Promise tuition program comes after federal and state aid and before any tribal scholarships. Tribal leaders continue to meet with the president. She has had 3 meetings with them. In particular, they've highlighted workforce development initiatives, some individual problem solving, which we've been able to help them with. So just general workforce development needs. She will meet with the chairs of the American Indian Advisory Boards on Monday, as required by Board of Regents policy. And that is made up of alumni, current students, and other campus level stakeholders by campus. Regarding the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, since I submitted this slide for your consideration, we've actually had some movement on repatriation of the Mimbres collection. The Hopi tribe has resolved its location difficulties. We anticipate working with the Hopi as the lead tribe to repatriate their ancestors and funerary objects in the fall. In the meantime, we're hoping for October-ish. They have been sending representatives here, giving us guidance on how to care for their ancestors and funerary objects. The Weissman has been absolutely gracious and accommodating and hospitable in accommodating any requests that they've had about how we store and take care of those ancestors. The bottom line on this is the tribes are happy with the way the process is going and the regard and concern that they've been given. In addition, we've had the NAGPRA coordinator here, who we have one now, has a longtime relationship with the tribes, a pre-existing relationship, is very well regarded, have had both group and individual consultation with tribes to let them know what we know of already that might be subject to NAGPRA, and they are working quite cooperatively and are also quite happy with the transparency, the communication, and the cooperation that we are providing them as we move those discussions forward. So we're in a good spot right now with NAGPRA. We have started a tribal liaisons community of practice, and I know I updated you last year about the Indigenous research policy and the guidelines. This is kind of an outgrowth of that, of how do we actually move that policy and actually integrate it into the way that we do our work. And so we asked deans to identify staff that could serve as tribal liaisons. So this community of practice is getting trained up. They're meeting regularly, and then they are to make relationships with tribes at that level. So we facilitate communication between President Cunningham and tribal elected leaders. At the college level, they would work with natural resources directors, health directors, form advisory boards, and form those relationships. So when there are research or other opportunities that are either requested by tribes or our researchers, they have those pre-existing relationships and can keep them updated regularly as a normal course of business instead of on an ad hoc basis as driven by our own agendas. The Center for American Indian and Minority Health, I'm working with them right now to facilitate some conversations just about because workforce development in the healthcare, along the healthcare spectrum has been identified by tribes, how do we fit within the One Health Minnesota initiative, and how can we take advantage of those investments and make sure some of the things we want to talk about are, rather than each school having their own recruiters, is there a way we can combine those efforts and be more effective, look at supportive services, whether or not we need any help to support pathway programs and things like that. So those conversations are just starting, and I look forward to updating you on where those go next year. If you haven't checked out the website, please do so. There's a wealth of resources on there. We did there's that 5-part training in the training hub. Anybody who is requesting research with tribes or is in the community of practice is required to do that. The fact of the matter is we've had huge uptake of that training regardless of whether they have a project upcoming. So we've had over 1,100 so far complete the course, which delighted me. Our guidelines get many hits on our website. We had a symposium last fall with about 120 participants, brought in a noted speaker who is one of the founders in the Indigenous Data Sovereignty movement. And it's really about respecting that tribal sovereignty, continue to develop educator resources. We're seeing the website get a lot of hits even from outside of the University of Minnesota. Although I really think we continue to develop that as a resource. I don't know that it's where I want it to be yet, but it's a real good start. And then we have this tribal research request form, which brings me in early in the process so I can provide guidance to any researcher that needs it and get them started in a good way. And then we maintain the tribal projects list. The Cloquet Forestry Center continues to be a work in progress. The most progress has actually been made on the relationship between Fond du Lac and the university, in particular the college CFANs, around how does the tribe value the education outreach. I always forget the third one. Yeah, that thing. They do support it, right? They know that it's valuable and that is useful to them with their own natural resources stewardship for developing their workforce around the environment and natural resources. So a series of agreements, we think that they're almost done, that would allow a long-term tenancy of the University of Minnesota at the Cloquet Forestry Center. And of course, none of us can control what happens at the legislature, but hope springs eternal. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Thank you very much. As we open it up for questions or comments, I had one question that I wanted to ask you, and it had to do with your comments going back to the aid that we are able to provide to Native Americans students. And you talked about that if I heard this correctly, that the Native American Promise tuition kicks in after federal aid, is that correct?
Federal and state aid.
And so with what's coming out of Washington, is the federal aid in this arena being affected? And if so, then how will that impact our role with the Native American Promise tuition?
I think some of that will be dependent on what happens with state aid as well, and how any of that balance is able to be mitigated at the state. Once again, hope springs eternal. But, we budget for a certain amount, and so that would have to be revisited among senior leaders and the president about what's actually affordable.
Okay. So it could be impacted, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, okay. Other questions, comments? Regent Tad Johnson.
Thank you, Chair Mayron, and thank you, Senior Advisor Diver, for your presentation. And I just want to mention we've got some new staff folks, but and just to remind everybody how fortunate we are to have you here. You're kind of one of a kind, former tribal leader from Fond du Lac, former advisor to President Obama, a graduate school at Harvard, and I know you were sought out by several universities, so we're very fortunate to have you here. And I know you do international presentations in every place from New Zealand to Australia, and most recently Harvard asked you out to give a presentation, so very happy that you're here. And I just want you to, just a real general question, why is it important for students and Minnesotans to know the history of the Native nations of Minnesota? And what can that add to their knowledge of the state?
Well, it's a state because of land cessations by the tribes through treaties. The wealth of the University of Minnesota was created, the Permanent University Fund with tribal lands and resources, right? But we could revisit a lot of the history, but I really like to talk about contemporary issues. Tribes are huge employers in Minnesota, collectively the 11th largest employer in the state if you looked at them as a group. Their jobs are largely rural. They drive rural healthcare. I often said in my community of Cloquet, without the wonderful insurance the tribe provided, I'm not sure there would be a local hospital in Cloquet, Minnesota. So the contributions are huge. For us here at the University of Minnesota, and why this work is really important, is tribal learners need to see themselves here and how that they can see themselves within any of the disciplines and how they can contribute back home. So it's part of the reason why we continue to build that community of practice so they can do some of this learning within it. You know, they should see themselves in every class that they take, at least to some point, right? We can't talk about disproportionate health issues without talking about the why. And then you go back to that history of why those things occur, right? And then what are the strategies that actually work that might be different? Since the research policy was in place, I've actually kind of done a roadshow throughout various departments and colleges on the university to talk about how does this look for you? You know, I did the College of Design. It affects them. The veterinary school, guess what? And so to be able to have those conversations and kind of say, not everything needs to be from a Western perspective, and what is the value when you challenge yourselves to bring in learners with different perspectives and academics with different perspectives. So it all goes to a better Minnesota, right, and a better citizenry.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? Yes, Regent Kenyanya.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Senior Advisor. Good to see you again. I just obviously want to offer my thanks as well, but maybe draw a little more attention to the Cloquet piece, because a few of us had the chance to hang out with you there in the fall, although you refused to hike with us. You ditched us at that point. But
I don't like wood tips.
Yeah.
We have no tips.
But that was, if anyone gets the opportunity, that was very illuminating for me and Director Gill. Just a couple things we learned there. One, obviously how much better the relationship has gotten, but therefore how bad it used to be. Kyle was telling us, Director Gill, I should say, how previous directors didn't know the tribal foresters. They didn't even communicate, know each other's names, have each other's number. And obviously that's happened over a number of years. And to the point you were just talking about the different, appreciating the different ways and the knowledge, the tribal knowledge. When we went into the forest and the director showed us, he took us right in the middle. He said, this was kind of Western preserved and this was Native preserved. And we had the chance to just, we did the activity, we had to touch, see, smell. It was fun. But we got to see the differences and how there's not necessarily a simply a right or wrong. There's a lot to learn, from each other. So I guess what I'm trying to call out there is while we're still waiting on the legislature to act, the relationship on the ground has improved vastly, and they're in great communication and really partnering. So I guess I just want to recognize that you can advise us and we can make decisions, but then the people have to embody that, and actually build those relationships. So just wanted to call that out, and hopefully you will hike with us next time, Senior Advisor.
Yes.
She's like, no.
Yep, Regent Hipsch.
Building on the cloquet, is everything in line for this bonding session now with the legislature to get that transferred? Do you feel?
It's been a complicated legislative session for, I think, lots of issues that are near and dear to our heart. The band, the Fond du Lac Band in particular, has been working through their government affairs teams to be directly responsive to any of the questions or comments that have come up. And, that's how we're aware that, the band is really committed to that long-term tenancy of the Forestry Center. They sent correspondence to the legislature assuring them that this it's useful to the band, too, as an important part that they brought up. We are land-based peoples, and with the threats of climate change and, landscape scale changes, that affects how we interact with it, and research is also useful to us, right? And so they were telling some of that story to the legislature. What the final outcome will be, we'll see.
Thank you. Yes, President Cunningham.
Well, I just want, it's been a joy to get to work with Karen over the past year, and I appreciate her deep knowledge, which she is imbuing upon me and the administration all the time, as well as the connections that we've gotten to make as she's introduced me to the tribal community. And I had the great opportunity, when my first commencement here was the Native American Health Professions focused commencement, which was a real joy to see, and a joy to see that group celebrate with their community, and obviously others who were welcome to attend as well, and bring their customs into that, and how well we're supporting that here. Gives me great hope that we're on a good path for our students going forward.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you very much. Thanks for the
Thank you,
annual
Regents.
report.
Thank you,
and
Chair
Thank
Mayron.
you. Thank you very
Why
much.
has it changed over time? So thank you.
You should all be proud.
Yeah, we are. We are. All right. Next on the agenda is our seventh item, which is a report on the results of the 2024 University Economic and Community Impact Study. With us today is Executive Vice President Goldman, Vice President Gade, and Interim Director of Government and Community Relations, Christine Keel. If the three of you would like to come to the podium, please, and when you're situated, you may proceed.
Thank you, Chair Mayron. And we've also asked Vice President Volna to join us for questions afterwards, since he is well-versed in the survey.
Thank you.
Chair Mayron and our board, it's a pleasure to be here today to talk about the University of Minnesota's economic engine for the state and the region. The entire system, all 5 campuses, extension offices, research and outreach centers, and clinical care facilities provides economic vitality for every region and corner of Minnesota. Throughout the presentation, we'll talk about the results of the 2024 study, and then pivot to how our marketing and communications and government relations teams will leverage the findings as we move the university forward. The headline, University of Minnesota's 2024 annual economic impact was $11.5 billion. Let me repeat that, $11.5 billion. The economic impact grew 34% from 2027 results. Trip Ombach, the study's authors, observed the growth was especially notable in Rochester and the Twin Cities. Drivers of this growth included increased enrollment, growth in research activity, and strategic capital investment. Notably, University of Minnesota generates a nearly 17x in total return on every dollar invested by the state. Trip Umbach noted that UMN's direct return to the state is approximately $1 of direct state for every state operating appropriation, the highest they've seen amongst any of their university clients. The university's mission not only delivers a quality education to 70,000 plus students who enroll here, we also impact lives, careers, and industries in the state by creating productive alumni, many of whom stay in Minnesota after graduation, driving key industries such as agriculture, med tech, and green energy, training the majority of Minnesota's health professionals who impact the health and quality of life of all Minnesotans, as we talked about this morning for All Minnesota Health. The university's recent and projected enrollment growth will continue to impact in a positive way. University of Minnesota's technology commercialization has made us number 2 among public universities and number 3 overall amongst all U.S. universities. One of only 4 institutions that have 20 or more startups each year for the past 4 years. Since the 2006 founding of Venture Center, a division of the University of Minnesota's Technology Commercialization Group, the university has launched more than 250 startup companies with a long-term success rate. In FY 2024, a record 88% of new startups, 22 out of 25, were located in our state. The 25 startups also met the university's goal to spin out 25 by 2025. That's a good marketing thing. Our other important economic factors: 73% of our startups are based in Minnesota, 68% are still active or acquired today, well above the national average, continuing to generate annual impact. Our startups have raised more than $1.8 billion, $1.1 billion in startup investment capital, and $675 million from IPOs and acquisitions from FY 26 to FY 2022. You often hear about the university's world-class research enterprise in terms of ranking, 12th amongst all public research universities. Research spending, faculty discoveries, patents, et cetera, add to the breadth of our research. It is vital for every Minnesotan to understand the university's research, as that also drives economic growth in Minnesota and beyond. Our research enterprise creates $3.9 billion in annual statewide economic impact, supports over 25,000 jobs, and generates more than $212 million in annual tax revenues for the state. Trip Umbach noted University of Minnesota's research and innovation account for a larger percentage of our economic impact than other peer universities. The university is one of a limited number of U.S. academic medical centers with robust schools of nursing, pharmacy, dentistry, public health, and veterinary medicine. Collectively, they have tremendous support on the economic impact of Minnesota, generating $2.6 billion of annual economic impact. They also impact the human health of the state, including training over 1,000 residents and fellows and 265 medical students annually, who serve more than 1 million patients annually through our clinical practice organization, UMP. This slide provides a remarkable visual on the university's statewide impact. The university not only impacts regions, but communities, rural, urban, tribal, and so forth. In a moment, we'll touch on the impact of each campus. Within the full report, there's also data showing impact by congressional district and by economic development region. Each UMN campus creates economic impact within their respective regions. Excluding Twin Cities, the total greater Minnesota impact of the other campuses is over $1.6 billion, over 11,232 jobs, and state tax revenue of 774.1, as noted in the headline above. And with this, I'd like to turn it over to Vice President Gotti to talk more about the report.
Thank you, EVP Goldman, Chair Mayron, President Cunningham, and Regents. Want to highlight how the strategy we're building from a communications perspective is reflective of where we're evolving to in bringing visibility to this type of good news for the University of Minnesota and other key priorities. We're building strategies that are objectives driven. In this case, you see some of them here, and some of the comments by EV Goldman are reflective of that. We want to make sure that we're integrating across the entirety of the university as we build these strategies. And address some of what we have often heard is, are we speaking with the strongest voice? And do the people of the state of Minnesota appreciate what the University of Minnesota brings to the state? And are they willing to express their voice on it? And at minimum, sustain that investment, but hopefully grow it. So our primary objective in this strategy and in others is really to increase awareness and understanding and ultimately inspire action. And how do we connect the dots across the university in this and other strategies to really leverage the scale and scope of who we are and ensure that all portals of communication have the tools necessary to activate? And I will just quickly offer that remains a work in progress, but through stronger collaboration, we're defining new ways of working together across our marketing communications function, and confident that we can and will get where we need to be. A big part of this strategy, in addition to the data, is telling stories. There's great storytelling that happens across the university, but we want to make sure that it is local, relevant, impactful, and carries the level of emotion and is truly told with authenticity. So in this story, in this economic impact study, we're weaving in examples of how university research and discovery affects Minnesota agriculture, and that it has a significant impact on our state economy as part of telling that story. And how our university startups not only improve the environment, but create jobs. And you see Niron Magnetics, which is one of the world's only high-performance, rare earth-free permanent magnets. And it's developed right here in Minnesota, and it's bringing jobs to Minnesota. And the ongoing story of how our medical and scientific discovery also saves lives. We're thinking audience by audience and thinking about what is the desired action that we want those audiences to take. And what are some of the ways we want them to think about the University of Minnesota and ultimately move the needle in terms of building that awareness, understanding, and inspiring action. Christine Keel will talk about it in just a minute, about the view of elected officials, and we want them to feel, sense, and understand that the University of Minnesota is truly a powerful investment for our state. We want community and business leaders to share the story and advocate on our behalf. And of course, we want people inside the university family, starting with our own faculty, staff, and employees, to feel pride in the value we bring, and all Minnesotans not only to feel pride, but confidence in what the university is bringing to the state. I'll turn it to Christy.
Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you for the opportunity to contribute to this conversation. I'm pleased to share the government relations team's integrated strategy. Like Mr. Gotti said, it is an integrated strategy for legislative engagement to powerfully communicate the University of Minnesota's economic value and the importance to the state. Our approach is rooted in one key principle: behind every number is a person, and that is their constituent. The government relations team already employs a variety of methods to share and amplify and highlight aspects of this report. In fact, just yesterday, we emphasized it in committee's the conference committee met for the first time of the higher ed, and we emphasized it in our testimony during that committee meeting. But there's more we can do and we will do. We will do personalized district level messaging. So we'll develop for each legislator in congressional district a customized economic impact scorecard. We will emphasize jobs supported locally, alumni living there, and the economic contributions. We will then do an immersive district engagement. We call it a roadshow, where we go out during the interim and meet with legislators in their district. We will invite them to see things in their community, whether it's 4-H or extension or a clinical program we might have there. And we will also partner with UMAA to have them meet with alumni in their district in a more robust manner. And then constituency-led advocacy. As I mentioned, we already work with UMAA closely, and this will be another step that we take in getting the alumni to write maybe a letter of support directly to a legislator, have a coffee with them, have come and testify on behalf of things. Our goal is to have constituents, not just the university, carry this message forward. And then the other part that we are working with Mr. Gotti's team on is a digital storytelling of sorts. This isn't my world, so I don't know if it's like geocaching or whatever it may be, but just more targeted and personalized messaging that they would get, whether it shows up in their social media feed or likewise. And then, of course, committee testimony, which we've already done robustly this year. Many of the folks sitting here with me have already come to testify, and today will be joining me again in conference committee, Mr. Volna. And then relationship management. It is all about building relationships with legislators and our alumni and other folks. And I will turn that back over to Mr. Gotti.
Thank you, Ms. Keel. So as we build this strategy, mentioned before, it's really about integration across the university and what are the ways we build tools and assets that meet not only the objectives we're setting out at a university level, but also for the colleges, campuses, and units. And collaboration is critical to that and building those shared objectives. One of the things we built for this strategy is a set of tools that includes key messages, core content, social media assets, and visuals. We are making those available not only to marketing communication leads and leaders across the university, but also increasingly making those available to you as regents for you to also express your perspective on these important topics. We'll do that in a digital portal format. Also want to call out what Ms. Keel also mentioned is the webinar that the Alumni Association is doing. It's been fantastic, and we're growing that partnership on this project and on others over time. And the other piece just to mention is how do we influence opinion leaders through a more robust influencer outreach strategy across the state of Minnesota. Of course, we will do the bread and butter of earned media, news media outreach, including next week. President Cunningham will be part of a WCCO AM segment early in the morning with this as the primary focus of that, and do additional news media outreach. And also mentioned earlier, we are doing paid social in key geo and demographic targets across the state. And then finally, integrating this into visibility, not only for President Cunningham, but for other leaders across the organization. The timeline, straightforward, and we welcome your comments, questions, any discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. President Cunningham, before we open it up for questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you. This is a tremendous year-long effort. First of all, we started the economic impact study last summer. I was quite eager to have an updated economic impact study, and Mike Volna, new VP Mike Volna, took that on with energy and enthusiasm despite the very aggressive timeline. But then I just want to call the board's attention to sort of, in addition to this particular topic, a change that we are making that hopefully you will see an overall strategy here, right? So So with Chris Gotti's joining us last fall, a different strategic approach across what was one of the board's goals this past year of how we're really going to be more visible and have all Minnesotans understand us best, as well as more of our national reputation. And the way that we're doing this is the kinds of tactics that he's bringing there. Of course, Christine has been doing an amazing job stepping into this role and making sure that we have that at the government relations component as well. But even things simply like that one-page handout, which we sent around to everyone that has the economic impact study, those kind of leave behind one-pagers are newer to our toolkit here, certainly something that's vital, something that we're continuing to work with these other multiple tactics so that we not only have what is a great news story about the university, but a real emphasis of how we then strategically employ that to make sure that it's to the benefit of folks across Minnesota and to the benefit of University of Minnesota. And I think you're seeing that here with this sort of kind of beginnings of what will be a communications and government relations and broad strategy that you will then see played on repeat, over the fall as we launch other initiatives, as we launch other strategic planning, et cetera. So with a lot of kudos to the team for having what is this integrated approach and non-siloed approach across our executive team, which is really important, and also a very strategic approach. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, we'll start taking names from my colleagues here. I'll just start it off with a couple of questions. So first, this beautiful report, beautiful and substantive report that is in our materials, who will see this? Who will you hand it out to see really the guts of what leads to the PowerPoint presentation? And the second is, as we talk about the role of the media, we always talk about, do we want to be above the fold on the front page of the Strib, for example? How do we get the Strib and other news outlets to put us above the fold or front and center about this incredible impact that we are having on the state, so that that's what they're reporting as part of what's going on here in Minnesota? And I don't know if they're in the audience or not. I don't know if we have any reporters in the audience, and I hope if we do, we're gonna see this front and center or above the fold. But even to get them interested to be here to hear this report today.
I can take, Chair Mayor, and I can take the last question first, and others can answer as well to the first. I think it's critical that continuing to build solid working relationship with a range of people across not only that particular outlet, but all outlets. And it takes time and energy and commitment from the team within our world of university marketing communications, but also the leadership of the organization. President Cunningham has already done and committed a significant amount of time to do that. That's terrific. And we need to broaden the array and depth of those relationships. The other key ingredient of being, quote, above the fold is making sure that we have a process in place inside the organization to get the best examples of the goodness of the University of Minnesota to us in timely fashion. And last time, I think we all appreciate the fact that this is a vast organization. And we are building tools and processes that allow us to get in front of those best stories in a more timely fashion so we can amplify them most effectively, leverage those relationships, and tell stories to media not only across the state of Minnesota, but across the United States in a much more proactive way. And relationship building is key. Great story ideas is the other component of that. And the other piece on this, on the first question, starts, I think, in Ms. Keel's zone in terms of elected officials, but influencers in general, including this group of people and others, not only getting the full report, but also the highlighted fact sheet, one-pager that the president referred to, and then just snippets on social media, because we all digest it differently.
So why don't let's hear from Ms. Keel, and then Interim Director Keel, and then President Cunningham.
Madam Chair, thank you. Yeah, in working with Mr. Gotti, our plan is to send the full report out to all 201 legislators, but for those who represent each of our district, or the campus in each of their district, they would get a more strategic marketed like summary of what their campus delivers to that district. And then I call it the slow drip, because oftentimes when legislators go away after the final gavel goes down, there's kind of no information. And so we're going to slowly, once a month, continue to communicate with them and be like, here's this part of the economic report you maybe didn't see, or here's this, and just keep that slow drip reminding them as a way to communicate with them as well.
President Cunningham, you wanted to?
Yeah, again, I just want to highlight, so in order for us to be strategically placed with the right news at the right time, we need a sophisticated and modern communications operation and a sophisticated and modern government relations operation. And so, one of the things that we did in this past year is we split out those functions into 2 senior leaders, first of all, and then as you know, VP Gotti has come in and is now doing with interim leader Keel, we are doing deep dives into those organizations and understanding where they could be more sophisticated, where we have great people but need to build a modern organization that has a modern, sophisticated strategy, because getting our news in the right place at the right time will not simply happen by happening board meetings with materials. It has to happen with all this back work of an entire sophisticated shop with the right people in a central communication structure doing it. And so with that, you will see we are investing in those components, which are critical to us having the public and government relations information that we need out to the world. That will then contribute not only to increased reputation for us, but also impacts our admissions, impacts the way our alumni feel about us, will impact alumni giving later on. So it's a multitude of outputs that come. But first, I just want to, I think the board understands this. I mean, we have to completely restructure and rebuild these components of the organization, which have need that right now. And so with that, I am investing in that. We are investing in time, and the teams that are there are doing a lot of the work to do that. And with that, you're beginning to see what it could look like as we really then ramp that up into a very modern, sophisticated communications and government relations structure. It's hard back work that produces this kind of front work.
Thank you. Yeah. All right, Regent Turner.
Thank you, Chair Maron. I had the opportunity through the, I believe, working with the Alumni Association to do an in-district in my own district, and it was great fun. And when I hear you say a road trip, will the Regents, I mean, not only just in your own district, because we can go to all these different districts representing as a regent, so people, first of all, know who the heck we are or know what we're all about. But I just found that experience really energizing, and to be able to see not only the legislators, but the communities, and hopefully be able to, I know that I can't speak for everyone, but I know that I'm personally interested in that, able to have that opportunity. So I'm asking, can we have that opportunity?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Regent Turner, yes, Lisa Lewis and I have actually already spoken, and we have a plan, and we work, Ms. Lewis is, President of UMA, we spoke and we have a plan for this, and so more to come.
Thank you.
Wonderful. All right, Regent Wheeler.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair Miron. And actually, President Cunningham, you took my question, which was, do we have the infrastructure to support this in the best way? So thank you. We
don't
need
yet.
to build it.
We are
Okay.
building that.
That's good. But a couple of points that I wanted to make. One is that, in Minnesota, we have to, balance humility with pride, in a substantive way. It seems maybe too substantively sometimes. So I really like the personal awareness approach of dropping the numbers down to an effect on a person. If we lead with questionings, like I remember when we went to the legislature and asked how many of you were trained or touched by the University of Minnesota, and I think at that point, a couple years ago, it was 70%. So we have to kind of lead with questions that actually get the personal engagement. I think has been an effective strategy. And then to build on Regent Turner's things, I think we all have opportunities here. Use us as one of your effector arms where it matters. I mean, I think I've spoken at the Medical Association. I'm going to do an UMRAS talk later on. This week I taught at the School of Public Health. Probably I should make the Board of Regents office aware of these things. But if we did, we could be, doing some of the messages in those meetings as well. So don't be afraid to Regent Turner's point of using us as an extension of this. Thank you.
Let me just say in that regard, I was thinking, here we are, we're about to do how many commencements over the next week? 35 or something, astronomical
25.
number. And we as regents all speak at them, but what we do is we confer the degrees. And maybe we could expand our comments at every one of those venues to talk about how these graduates are leaving an institution that has this enormous impact and get out to the audiences. There's, we have this access to these audiences, some very large, about the institution that their family member or just graduated from, what impact it has on the state. So I think that's an opportunity for us as regents to talk to a whole bunch of people about the value of the degree that their child or relative got, but more importantly, the value of the university. I don't know whether that's feasible or not, but I still think we could take up a couple minutes of every one of those commitments with prepared remarks by you all about what we need to get out immediately. Just a thought.
Chair Mayron, Regent Wheeler, completely agree. I think there's a ton of opportunity to expand that type of example into other examples as well. Our team working with Brian's is doing that kind of thinking and more of it to come.
Well, we appear and get invited to so many venues, and it seems to me we could be putting in a plug for this university at every one of them in terms
Agreed.
of impact to the state.
I need it by tomorrow, though. I'm doing that.
I got one in an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Hour and a half. I mean, there.
All right.
Just a comment inspired by that. I would say,
Johnson.
a week ago today, I conferred degrees at the University of Minnesota Medical School and got permission to add a paragraph before the convert.
Okay.
I got good feedback on it, actually, from parents and students and others on that, so it's a little start.
Okay. Well, you can either ask for permission or you
Just do it.
can do it and ask for
Forgiveness.
forgiveness
Yeah.
after.
Well,
All right, Regent Hipsch.
Thank you, Chair Mayron. It's going to come as no surprise that I love this, okay? I think it's really, these are the direct economic benefits, okay? The indirect ones are the 500,000 alumni that are out in the state building businesses and presidents of companies and starting businesses, and that's where the true taxes and economic revenue. But also, I'm really driven by economics, which probably too much, some people would say, but also we got to talk about the social benefits, the environmental benefits. We talked this morning about the health benefits, and you put those all together and you get a happiness index. And we've got 10,000 lakes, and we protect those lakes from aquatic invasive species and pollution. And we protect our groundwater so we can irrigate, $2.5 billion worth of corn in the state and whatever else. And so we really do protect the environment. And we talked this morning about the healthiness of our state. These are all part of contributing to a happiness index that talks more than economics. It talks about a great place to live and work and be a part of. So commend you on this. I just love this. I hope we can get to a one-page paper that we can, put a staple to our head and walk in. So, that's what I'm looking for. But thank you for your hard work on this because it's really great. So thank you.
We'll get you the one pager.
Yeah.
All right, Regent Kenyanya.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Regent Hipsch, some of us have varying head real estate to work with, but I think it will certainly fit.
Can you leave again?
Madam Chair, Chancellor Strunk-Erickson will tell you I'm known to go off script at those commencements, so I've been testing it for a while. Really, really thank you all for the work and for the presentation. I'm kind of going to hone in on one point. VP Gotti, you talked about finding the best examples in a timely fashion and then translating that into storytelling, I think was what you said. And it made me think of my employer. In orientation, there's a video they play, or at least they did 6 years ago, that it walks you through someone's day, and they wake up, they go to work, I think they get hurt and they go to the hospital. But in each scene, it's like spot the client, right? I mean, because we work for everyone, right? So in the hospital, it's like the hospital bed, and then and I was kind of thinking about that, and I think the university is very similar. And part of telling the U of M's story is also just telling higher education's story. I think they go hand in hand. People, myself included, it's very hard to tie in, even when you read about certain research, to your life. What does that actually mean for me day to day? And it means a lot, but it's not always easy to tie that in. So I almost just started picturing that video for the university, right? What it would look like. Took some notes here, jotted something. I have a storyboard for you, if you will. But I mean, someone wakes up, turns on the lights. The Institute on Environment, may have helped influence policy, and now they're getting, clean energy. Where did we touch them there, right? They go out to the car, put on the seatbelt. We know we innovated there. They're driving, and the commute is pretty smooth. Maybe the Center for Transportation Studies had a hand in there. Regent McMillan would love this one. The potholes on the road were filled by the taconite waste from NRI was working with. And you can just go throughout the whole day and imagine if they had a clinic visit. So if we can make it real for people, and every touch point in your day does go back, not always to the U of M, but certainly higher education. And I do think those can be promoted together. And if as real as we can make that for people, I think they'll start to appreciate. And it's more relevant now, actually. I mean, again, research sometimes just sounds like just someone in a lab, doing whatever. I've had the benefit of finding out what that means and what that lab work actually translates into, and finding out that, anyway. So that storytelling piece really struck me, and I think the realer we can make it for folks, the buy-in will just be natural, because they care about those things, and if they could link them back to us and higher education at large, I think the support will follow.
Regent Kenyanya, we'd welcome your storyboard, that idea. And what we're in the midst of right now is just thinking through, as we evolve as a university, the strategic plan. What defines and makes us most distinct? What's the essence of our brand? And how is it most relevant to all audiences that the university touches? That work is underway. As we do that crystallization of that definition, building on what maybe has been previous, to where we are currently as a university, where we are in terms of people's views toward higher education in the state and in the nation. How do we evolve that, make it most relevant, and then what are the stories that we append to that essence and tell time and time again to a variety of audiences in relevant ways, as personalized as we possibly can over the course of time?
Thank you. Regent Robbie, I'm going to ask you to bring it home, and then we've got another very important matter, which is to hear about strategic planning.
Yeah. Thanks, Chair Mayron and speakers. Just a really great presentation, and I think something that is very much needed. So I'm really excited to see the report and to hear about it and the approach that you're taking. I do think that some of the comments that we've all been sharing is that people want to hear and see it connected personally to them, right? So sometimes when you put out the big numbers, it feels like, okay, that's something else, right? It feels overwhelming and things, but I think it's really important, because what you're talking about is carrying some threads through this kind of messaging so that it isn't fragmented across our network and system and things like that. And so I think that's super helpful. But I think the approach of really localizing and personalizing the messages so that it has meaning to people, right? We all can speak about it because we care so much about this institution, but the average Minnesotan may be impacted by the university, but they aren't telling that story, right? So to be able to kind of continue in that approach, I just want to encourage you, and I look forward to hearing more wherever I go in the state about how people feel close to the university and what it means for them, whether it's their job or their research or, the economic impact. So I just want to give you kudos and continue to support the way in which you're moving this.
Thank you. Great presentation, very energizing. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right. The next item on our agenda is the University Strategic Plan and update. This is on phase 2 of the Maroon, Gold, and Bold System-wide Strategic Plan process. With us today are Andrew Aileen, Dean of the College of Science and Engineering on the Twin Cities campus, and Charles Nees, Chancellor of the Duluth campus. Both are co-chairs of the Maroon, Gold, and Bold System-wide Strategic Plan Steering Committee. Before the two of you begin, President Cunningham, do you have any remarks you would like to share?
I do. Thank you, Chair Mayron and members of the board, and a giant thank you to Chancellor Nees and to Dean Aileen for co-chairing our process and bringing us to the place that we are today. I want to just provide you with some key updates regarding this planning. First of all, it's important to reiterate, and we've gotten this question from faculty and even from some of the committee at times, that things are uncertain financially. Should we pause planning? No, we should not pause planning. We need to have strategic planning is more important than ever when there is financial uncertainty and resources are scarce. We will need to be more strategic and to chart an intentional course now more than ever. So we will not hold back or slow down our strategic planning efforts. And indeed, I have some eyes on how we can speed them up. I'll remind the board, we committed to getting this done by the end of the calendar year. I have great hopes that we can deliver ahead of that, but I do like to underpromise and overdeliver. So, but certainly by then. And with that, to remind people that there will be a tendency to want to latch on to things you hear today and believe that these things are the strategic plan, where that is not true. What we are presenting you today is where we are in the process, and then where the process will go between now and May, and what lands us in fall or end of fall, which will have a whole different level of detail and a different level of focus than it is today. But I did want to make sure that we had an update today on where we are in the process, how it's been going, how the team has been thinking. But then again, encourage you not to hang on any one word or any one part of wording or any component there as the thing, because this is about a process update. So with that, I'll turn this over to my very capable chairs. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thank you, President Cunningham. Chair Mayron, Regents, we're super excited to be able to share with you an update, as President Cunningham said, where we are in the process and what's emerged at this point in time. And one of the outcomes for the presentation today is just to give you that update, again, not to say this is the plan. And so that's really important. But as you heard from the earlier presentation, the University of Minnesota has a huge impact with the state of Minnesota. And so part of the opportunity for us in this strategic planning process is to really be bold and to think big and how we can continue to move that message forward. So what you'll learn today is kind of why we are doing this, what's been done to date, just a quick update on the themes that have emerged and what happens next as we move forward. So again, the whole idea around this is that we really plan to create this big, bold opportunity for the University of Minnesota to lean into what we are doing and build upon the strong university across all 5 campuses that really leads the way in higher education. And the way that the 5 distinctive campuses really are bold in how we deliver on the mission of the University of Minnesota around discovery, learning, and outreach. And so this is an opportunity for us to really put in place some of those bold strategies to move forward. We spent some time, and we think it's really important to identify why we are doing this in the first place, the why behind the work that we do on the campus on a regular basis. And you heard yesterday from some of our faculty that were promoted into research, that are into their tenure positions, the research that they're doing. And a lot of that is really this commitment that we have as the University of Minnesota to build a healthier world. And that healthier world not only includes human health, but also includes environmental health, economic health, animal health, all of those different pieces, agricultural health. And so the opportunity for us to really identify that part of our why as a land grant and seed grant institution is around the health of all of that in a way that we move that forward. The other piece that is a really important why that drives our work is the undergraduate and graduate scholars that are part of our institution, and wanting to make sure that we think about their successes and how we develop programs and initiatives that really allow them to discover their true north. Leaning into a little bit the North Star State, this idea of the true north that our scholars are able to discover for themselves, not only about their academic goals, but also then their true north about what they want to do with their career once they graduate from the institution. And so this is really about our opportunity to do that. And it's also around the way we lean into our strength doing interdisciplinary research that is not just around innovation and discovery, but takes that research, takes that discovery, and builds stronger communities as we face the complex challenges of our world. And so part of what you've heard is that this isn't just about discovery for discovery's sake, but it is the discovery that is addressing these complex issues and having that impact that we believe is really important. As President Cunningham mentioned, it is urgent that we do this. And a lot of people, as President Cunningham said, are asking, should you do it during all of this uncertain times? But that is precisely why you do it. It's really important for us to be able to say, these are the imperatives that we are going to take on, the bold initiatives that really help us to move forward and do the strategic planning that we need to do, particularly as we navigate the uncertainties. And really then help tell that story, as you mentioned, Regent Kiana, about how the University of Minnesota touches people's lives. And the role that we play. And so we think that even though all of these uncertainties might exist out there, that this is a critical time for us to do this planning as we move forward. The other piece that we really want to highlight is our sense of place. And that we are doing this strategic plan as the University of Minnesota, which means we are doing it in partnership with the state of Minnesota and all the unique sense of place that the University of Minnesota has to offer. The rivers, the lakes, the waters, right? As some of you heard, there are more shorelines in the state of Minnesota than there are in the state of Washington, California, and Florida combined. As we look at all of those waterways, how do we lean into some of the unique ecology that is part of the state of Minnesota? The diverse economic opportunities that exist across the state. And reminded earlier this morning by the presentation that was delivered by Special Assistant to the President, Special Assistant Driver, about the role of our tribal communities as well, and how they all contribute to that. That idea that the University of Minnesota has these distinct campuses that are across the state and find different pathways and opportunities for scholars to engage in our institutions through the various ways that we move forward. We also are home to Fortune 500 companies. What does that mean? You heard earlier from the Economic Impact Report that we are developing startups that are part of that economic engine. So all of these are unique qualities of the state of Minnesota that we are really leaning into. And to your comment earlier, Regent Hipsch, about the happiness index, the state of Minnesota really offers that special quality of life. and how we continue to contribute to that through social health, physical health, and environmental health really helps us to continue to support that happiness index and the wonderful quality of life that exists here in the state of Minnesota. So all of that is part of what is driving our strategic plan. I now turn it over to my colleague, Dean Elaine, who's going to talk more about the process that we have used and update you on where we are today.
Thank you very much, Chancellor Neese. So you give the process piece to the engineer. We're going to talk a little bit about what we've been doing to this point, and a key thing to sort of remember, Chancellor Neese gave a great justification for why. A lot of this is going to be like what and how we've been doing it to this point, and then we'll talk right at the end about where we're going to go next. So we were very inclusive. You set off to start doing a strategic plan, and I guarantee you in the first few weeks, a lot of people are going to come and tell you, here's what you need to do for the strategic plan. Here's my individual thing, and that needs to be part of it. Intentionally, what we wanted to do was hear from all the stakeholders. Right? We university-wide, all the campuses, colleges, individual units. We also wanted to hear from the people, the faculty, the staff, the students, and as you'll see, we also did a lot of outreach to some of our external stakeholders. They have a unique perspective that can really help shape what you want to do internally. So it was very inclusive, and again, engineer, we like numbers. Here's how inclusive it was. We had sort of sets of town halls that were highly engaged. There was over 100 town halls that we had with over 3,600 participants. So we got a lot of input from the community. And in addition to those sort of larger scale in-person activities, we had sort of key opportunities for feedback apart from that. In the phase to this point, from sort of January through March, April, we had executive listening tours where we focused on hearing from key leaders across the system, and there were close to 80 participants. The survey that was done, that went out to about 100,000 people, received almost 8,000 responses. That's a lot to read. And as I mentioned before, the town halls on campus. Additionally, at some of our development events, advancement events, we engaged with some of our alumni and gathered input from them as well too, to see what they would like the future of their institution, and it is still their institution, to be. Going forward now, we are going to have additional engagement with faculty and staff, trying to get input into some of the priorities now that we've sort of focused down on some emerging themes, and Chancellor Neese is going to tell you about those. And we're going to be working a little bit closer in sort of tightly knit working groups to take a look at that input and refine some of those. As we refine these, we're going to have a little bit of a roadshow where we're going to have listening tours with key internal and external stakeholders, not an all call, where we try and solicit how they're viewing some of the opportunities that we're looking at. And I should have said at the beginning too, by the way, it's been wonderful working with my partner here. I think that the steering committee that I'll talk about in a bit has done great work, and it's been supported awesomely by the President's office, Brianna, and some of the other folks here too. So we're up here talking, but it's been a team effort. So, these are the people that we talked with when I talked about that executive listening tour where you had the 80 participants. We're talking about folks like our cabinet and senior leaders, vice presidents, deans from the different campuses, communications, governance leaders from sort of faculty governance, student governance, associate deans of research, academic officers, finance and legal, who are also key, research center directors, just a whole list of sort of key leaders who have the ability to look system-wide and have the university system as a whole's best interest in mind. Great hope. There were a couple of themes that emerged. One was a great hope for the university. They realized, even before this economic impact report came out, that the university provides many things, and you've heard many of those this morning. Economic development, Regent Hipsch, access to a better life. Education is a key stepping stone. The university, it produces well-educated people, but it also produces good citizens. They have a better understanding of their place in the world than when they came in, and valuable information that you can use to go ahead and inform, crop tillage or whatever you're going to be doing. These are all the things that we hope to carry forward, and many of the leaders recognize that. And so they have a great hope that the university is going to continue to have the kind of impact that we've seen it had in the past, and even better. Another thing that came through was leaning into the diversity of our different campuses, realizing that we are distinct and different, and amplifying those distinctions and differences to our strategic advantage. Talked about the survey. This was actually a large number of responses, and many of the responses, some of them were like a line or like 6 words, some were like 2 paragraphs, and so we really asked them, okay, what's gonna make the university excel in 2035? If we're in 2035 looking backwards, how do we know we implemented things in 2025 that made us better and world leaders? The information that came in was examined by a steering committee. We have a steering committee that helps to assess the information, and that Charles and I co-chair. We'd review all the information, evaluate the information, draft emerging themes. I will put a plug in here for technology. AI was very good about helping to call and sift through 7,800 different responses, and then help sort of set a direction for where we think we could go. And out of that came some themes that were pretty consistent across all the different sets of stakeholders that we looked at. And I'll turn it back over to my colleague now to walk us through those.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I have to say, it's been great. President Cunningham's wisdom of having a system thinking engineer and a system thinking social scientist working together as co-chairs was brilliance. I would like to say this is, again, just the emerging theme. So I don't want folks to look at this and say, this is a done deal, this is baked. But these are, given all of that sifting that we have been doing through the information that has come in, these are the themes that have really emerged. And the first is really looking at that educational experience for all of our graduate and undergraduate scholars on our campuses. And how do we make sure that we are creating those engaged learning opportunities that include research and internships, study abroad experiences, all of those type of elements that we know help support scholars' success on campus and help them discover their true north, if you will, and creating those educational opportunities as well. As Andrew mentioned, that we want our scholars, as they graduate from our institutions, to go out and be contributing citizens of whatever community they go into. So how do we help them to develop those skills of being able to contribute that through the dialogue and critical thinking opportunities that happen when we have vibrant communities? So all of that is part of that focus that fell under that kind of collegiate experience and student success area. We also, one of the themes that came up is the strength that we have doing interdisciplinary research and research excellence, particularly research that is solution-oriented, and that opportunity to take that knowledge that transforms communities, transform markets, makes a difference in our world. And so that was a big theme. Building stronger Minnesota communities. And so this is where that sense of place in the state of Minnesota and partnering with our communities across the state of Minnesota became a really important element as we looked at what we can contribute in partnership with our communities across the state to really help them continue to thrive and be vibrant communities. The other theme, as I mentioned earlier, is that commitment to that health, that broader understanding of health that includes environmental health and some of the great work and research that we're doing at the University of Minnesota around sustainable practices and some of the other environmental climate change related research, as well as human health and some of the work that you heard of. Those of you that were on the academic health committee this morning heard that we're doing across all 5 of our campuses to really help with that workforce development, as well as the research we're doing in changing lives. Andrew alluded a little bit to how we already used AI in our plan, but really one of the themes that has emerged is that if we're not looking at how AI cuts across all of the work that we do institutionally, and how are we on the cutting edge of this world and recognizing its impact that we'll have on our communities, that will be really important. And the last theme that's really emerged is an effort to do all of this stuff. We need to look at our campus's infrastructures and our research infrastructures, and how do we look at the facilities and the operations we have to make sure that we are bringing them up to date, providing the latest and greatest opportunities for our researchers and our scholars that are working with them to be successful, because we built that infrastructure in place that is going to make it happen and make a difference. So all of these are the emerging themes that we are seeing right now. And as Andrew laid out some of the next steps in our process, this is where we'll continue to look at these themes, get a sense of how they continue to resonate with people as we test them out with the various groups on campuses, as well as our external stakeholders. And so this is kind of where we're at in our next step.
Cool. And so what's next? As Chancellor Neese said, we're going to do some refinement. And you can think about these themes. There's 7 of these themes. Under each one of these, we're going to have specific opportunities, initiatives that emerge that will be instantiations of those themes, that will be those bold initiatives that will then go ahead and operationalize. And that's part of what the next phase is. We're looking for things that are going to really set us apart nationally, while having a huge impact here in this state. There are going to be some additional listening sessions. This is not the end of providing input. Far be it, as Churchill would say. This is not the end. And as it'll be a little bit of a partnership with the community as we, get the initiatives and opportunities under the themes. Key stakeholders will be tapped to go ahead and provide some of that refinement so that we're not an echo chamber as we build these. And with that, I believe we have a video. Second.
Now we're awake.
Yeah, fantastic.
So thank you for your time, and we'd love to turn it over to you, Chair Mayron, and the board for other questions or comments that you might have regarding the efforts that have been done to date.
Thank you. Before we open it up for discussion, President Cunningham.
Yeah, thank you again. And I do really want to call out, and we don't have the steering committee listed here, but it is made up of faculty and staff and students across disciplines that are working very, very hard monthly on this. And also a shout out to Brianna Manning, who has been keeping everything organized and moving forward, and Ryan Schmissing, who has joined this effort as well. So a big shout out there. Again, I just want to reiterate, so as the beginning of this, what is a giant qualitative research project happens, that then you hear enough of the themes to know what the big themes are. But those themes will not be the plan. The plan will then have clear objectives and clear initiatives that we then focus on and invest in. We will not boil the ocean. We will pick and prioritize what some of those initiatives are under each of those themes. We will then ask the schools and colleges to also tell us how they, over the next year or so, are going to fit into those themes after we launch this plan. And then, yes, there will be metrics after that and measurables after that for how we know we are succeeding on these things. I also just want to say the university is a big decentralized place. There will be many other things that happen. Other schools will have perhaps other priorities in addition to university priorities. But as a whole, these are the kinds of things that we're thinking the university will be moving towards in defining who it is and defining what initiatives we want to lean into strategically to invest in to advance who we are and what we're doing over the next 5-ish years, right? So we'll get all those other pieces. This is sort of the beginning, but with many thanks to the tremendous engagement. 8,000 survey responses is almost unheard of across our student population. So really amazing. And 3,600 people showed up in person for hours-long discussion, interacting with each other in tabletop exercises, plus alumni events across the country I've been doing this year, we've been gathering input on. So I think we've heard what the initial community feedback is, and then there will be a refinement and a lot of work. There will be work groups at each of these, whatever the theme is that it's decided, there will be a work group focusing on what would we actually want to do for initiatives at each of those pieces. And then, again, community input as to how those are resonating as we land. So those are these next pieces that we'll work on between now, it is May, and hopefully, it would be a fall conclusion of this with a goal of before the end of the year, certainly having then a launch of exactly it is where the university is investing and going in with hopefully a fabulous campaign plan to follow.
Thank you. Thank you. As we see if we have comments and questions here around the horseshoe, let me just ask a couple questions. Just to make sure, as you were soliciting input, were you asking people to talk about envisioning the future 10 years out, 5 years out? Or were there any parameters on the length of time? Our last strategic plan was 5 years. We're certainly aware other of our peers have 10-year plans, et cetera. So that's one question. Then the other is with respect to the town halls and the surveys, do you have a sense of where the bulk of your respondents came from? Are they students, are they faculty, or do you not break it out in that fashion to get an idea of, some are, like students may only be here for somewhere between 1 and 5 years or through their graduate school, and others are very long-term, internally long-term employees and faculty who may have different viewpoints about what they think this university should be and engage in the future. So that's my couple questions.
Good copy. I'll take the first one. So explicitly, in many of the questions were asked, particularly in some of the surveys, but also in the town halls, we put it's sort of like, the begin with the end in mind, you talk about. So 2035 was, here's we're writing a headline about what, we're proud of. And okay, to have that, what do we want to be known for then? Work backwards is the idea to what do we do now so that we're looking at then. That was sort of kind of explicit. I don't know if
Yeah,
President
that doesn't mean
Cunningham
our plan will be a 10-year plan.
No, I was
Yeah,
just
but
curious.
I think in order, it's, the thought there was if you ask people to limit what we can do in 5 years, they are very limited in their thinking and they're potentially not thinking bold enough because what one can accomplish in 5 years. But what you can do, if you have them think about 10 years, we could then think about where we would be on a trajectory to move the ship towards that in 5 years. So,
Correct.
Yeah.
Great. And then to the second part of your question, Chair Mayron, it was really, the breadth was across the institution. And so we had great input from everyone. The majority of folks that attended the town halls were faculty and staff. But again, a broad perspective of faculty and staff. And so I know, for example, the one in Duluth, we had over 180 people that came to the town hall and sat in small tables and had tabletop activities where they discussed, and it ranged from faculty that had been there for years to custodians and members of the dining center team to our student activity, student life people. So it was a great perspective that then all sat at tables together to make sure that they were sharing those ideas across the institution. And so I think that was the power of how we created the kind of World Cafe model that was used at most of the institutions across the university and then on the Twin Cities campus to collect all of that feedback through the town halls.
And how about on the written surveys? Do you have any sense, was it a more faculty employee response or more student, do you have a sense?
I don't have the data in front of it. I will get that and get that back to you.
Just curious about.
We do have it, so we know, and we were able to capture it, but it was across all different demographic groups.
A lot of students. More students do the online than they do the in-person.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the surveys that I remember, a lot of the surveys were students, but I think you still had a breadth there across and beyond.
And to be, Chair Maron, there were several of the listening sessions in town halls that were exclusively students as well, too.
Right.
But yes, and I will say that our students, they were not shy, and the ones, maybe this is my bias, but I expected them to be relatively naive about what was needed in 10 years to drive. And boy, some of them came back with ideas that I was thinking, that's pretty. What's your name again? Because that's a person I want to pay attention to for future alumni relations. But so we got very good feedback from.
Great.
Yeah.
All right, Regent Kenyanya.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and the co-chairs for the presentation and your work. I don't have too much feedback. I mean, this is comprehensive, and I think with the context of where we are in the process, I think this is what we'd expect. My only comment was about external input, and actually I wrote it down, but then the president alluded to it. You talked about community input down the line. I think it's important we make sure we get external, and not just, I think there's some obvious stakeholders that come to mind, but I'm thinking unaffiliated, external, just a Minnesotan, so we can balance gathering all our input and trying to think what's the best university we can offer to the state, but then also asking the state, what's the university, that you need, right? And find that sweet spot. Now, I will qualify that by saying it. We also are Minnesotans and citizens, so it's not like the dean can attest. We ran into each other at Whole Foods, so we're just people out there and whatnot. But to the extent we can make sure we just get unaffiliated people and just make sure we're incorporating their thoughts as well. But thank you for the work and for the update.
And just along those lines, I don't know if as you're gaining information from external stakeholders, but in terms of the employers of the state, to me, ultimately, we talk about economic impact, we want to make sure we have a university that is meeting the needs of our employers, and those needs are changing in a nanosecond. So good luck to all of us to be able to anticipate that, but getting a sense of what they're hoping for that our university can provide to them, I think is critical.
Agreed.
If I may, Chair Maron, we do have a consulting group who does this all the time, who's been advising us and the guidance there, although we got input certainly from the foundation folks and our alumni broadly for this first phase, but that it's this next phase, once we have a little something for people to react to. The thinking was there that, so there'll be industry and some government relations input that we'll get, but having that group have a blank page in their feeling was generally not a productive exercise, but instead having something for them to begin to react to was they found to be more productive. And that this second phase, I don't know what phase it is, whatever number phase we're in now, next, that happens over this next summer where there's more reaction and voice listening sessions and things, will start to tease out some of that, as well as additional leader and focus groups that will happen. So that should happen this summer.
Good. Okay. Regent Turner.
Thank you, Chair Maron. So you had your themes, and I'm going to glom on to the AI one, because the AI, now, just so I understand what's going on here, you are coming up with different themes to do future research, et cetera, under, and you would have, and the next step is to start to tease out how we're going to be in the forefront of like AI. And then my question is, and I don't know if I heard all this presentation right or not, but I didn't sleep very well last night, but anyway. My question is, and you talk about different levels of information from people. Now, AI is, just so you know, in the lives of the workers of America is a source of anxiety. It's a source of excitement, but it's also a source of anxiety. And so do you have plans to meet with, in the nursing profession, et cetera? Are we going to be replaced and all this other kind of stuff? Do you have plans to, in your quest to do research or whatever our plans are under AI? And like I said, I'm just using that as an example because that's one of the themes, to be very cognizant of all along so that we're doing it ethically. And, do you understand where I'm going with this?
I do. Yes. And by the way, nursing, interestingly enough, coders in computer science are very worried about AI replacing them with the ability to code. And this is not that different, but on a shorter time scale than mechanization in agriculture. Because a lot of people used to be on farms, now they're not. There will be a transition. When we talk about shaping the next generation of AI innovation, this is and forgive us if we didn't be as communicative as we could have. It's not just about the research and advancing the algorithms that go into AI. It is also how you would deploy it and use it in the classroom, in any of the processes that we do as a large, complex institution. It is very much in the curriculum in terms of teaching people what is an ethical use, as you say. Would you use it to support policy decisions? Because AI can actually cheat. And so if you rely, it's interestingly enough, if you give it a set of rules, agentic AI can actually circumvent those rules to gain an advantage, which people didn't think it could do before. So as you train, teach folks, and these are not only the people in STEM, it is sort of writ large. It goes to sort of the education piece. It goes to the research piece. It goes to running the university in terms of the modernizing the operations. You see that sort of that last bullet there. It can also be used in those. It also goes to working with our community, right, in terms of building stronger Minnesota communities. Are there ways that we can innovate such that some of the tools that exist can be brought into communities and help the communities rather than harm them? Part of that might be a lot of communication. We were talking about sort of the ground game a little bit earlier. That's, I think, going to have to be a lot of it, because I think there's a lot of ink used about AI, and sometimes it's not always accurate. And so, again, part of that is going to be a big part of the role. But the specific initiatives, whether it's going to be a curricular initiative, and I'm not going to suppose what it is.
Well,
I know.
let me help here on this part. So, and you may or may not be aware of the committee that's working on this, Andrew. So, right. So we have what this might look like. We know that there is a great need and call by our students that they need to, when they graduate, they need to be AI literate. In order to get jobs, the employers tell us that they need to be AI literate in order to get jobs. Yep. We know they need to be taught in their courses how to ethically use AI, both in their coursework as well as in whatever job they're going to enter in, so they don't take the company's data and upload it to the chat, to the chat bot. So there's a whole realm of things that need to be done for us as a university for AI in the next 5 to 10 years. Some of those are in educational components. Mm-hmm. Some of those are in our business practices. Is there something about, something our lawyers can do differently to help them in some way, for example, in business operations or in finance. And then there's research. Where are we going to lead in AI research? Where do we lead in AI research? Where are we going to lean in? We're not going to do everything related to AI research. And so there is a committee that you will hear from in June. thank you, who will come and give you an update. It's actually 3 committees within a larger committee that will come back and give you a detailed update about what that have been working for 8 months on what we believe what the recommendations are for where the university moves ahead in AI across those 3 fields. And that may indeed turn into what is the working group here as part of this for strategic planning. So it won't, how it's used ethically and how it's implemented, perhaps that's some of the focus of one of those initiatives down the road, but that's about 3 steps down. The first thing here is just at the highest level, is this a theme that's emerging? It is. We heard it across our students, we heard it across our staff, we heard it across our faculty, that we have to figure out both in policies that we need at the university around curriculum, and as well as what we're doing to teach our students, that we need to have an initiative around AI. And so I think that's what those will give us.
And just to kind of reiterate really quickly, so the idea is that these themes here, then, the actually strategic initiatives that will be placed on them will be developed by working groups, and that's the next phase. And you'll hear more about what are those specific initiatives that might fall underneath the themes. These are just the huge, big umbrella ideas that then the strategic initiatives with measurable outcomes will follow, and that's what we will then hopefully have ready for you by October.
And the board will get an update at the
absolutely.
retreat in July in a lot more detail.
I will say, Regent Turner. Oh, sorry. Chair.
Bring it home, because we're at 1:45 and we still have more of our board meeting.
I will
and
say,
you can tell we love this.
we greatly appreciate the input, because tying the second to last to the third bullet was not something that we discussed a lot of in terms of, out in the communities, the stronger communities across the state, out in Bemidji, out in, the AI impact on folks like that and our role to help in doing that. That's a very good idea. Thank you.
Great. Cool.
All right, thank you. And great questions, and very much looking forward to seeing where this takes the university. There are certain reasons that I think all of us who are terminating our involvement on the board wish we weren't terminating it, and this is one of them, to see where this strategic plan lands, but I know we will be keeping our eyes and ears open to see where you go. So thank you so much. At this point, we're going to move to our committee reports, and then because we are having a closed meeting as well. So that brings us to those reports. We're going to start first with the Academic Health Committee. Regent Wheeler, would you share your report?
Well, thank you, Chair Mayron. Academic Health Committee did not consider any action items this month. First item was an update on the strategic facilitation process announced by the Minnesota Attorney General's office earlier this spring. The presentation included remarks from Lois Quam, who's the strategic facilitator who is charged by the Attorney General to advance discussions between the university, Fairview, and Essentia. The committee had a good conversation with Facilitator Quam. I was struck by the positive assessment and tone she took in outlining her goals for the process. We look forward to future engagement as we continue to chart a new path with Fairview and Essentia and with others for the health of Minnesota. Our second item was the third of our University Health Sciences Across the State series, in which the committee is learning about how the university is serving Minnesota through academic and clinical training partnerships. This month's segment focused on the contributions that undergraduate health sciences programs are making to prepare students for entry into the workforce or professional graduate programs. The area highlights how we together as a system are meeting the healthcare needs of our state, something that was really highlighted in the economic impact as well. Thank you, Chair Mayron. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. For the report of the Audit and Compliance Committee, Regent Kenyanya, could you please share the report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Audit and Compliance Committee did not consider any action items this month, but we did have a couple agenda items. First, the committee learned about research compliance administration across the university system. This includes the processes, roles, and responsibilities therein. Committee members also discussed how the university manages challenges and adapts to the evolving research environment and continually changing agency regulations. For our second item, the committee reviewed proposed amendments to the Office of Internal Audit Charter. These revisions are needed to ensure alignment with recent updates to the Institute of Internal Audit Standards. The proposed amendments will return for action in June. As part of the discussion, Chief Auditor Galswick presented changes to OIA processes, including updates to the audit report issue rating system and simplifying audit reports. The committee also did take interest in having future conversations of how audit, compliance, and risk management functions interact and the committee's role in them here at the university. Finally, we received 2 information items this month: audit and non-audit services provided to the university and the completion of the comprehensive review of Board of Regents policy internal control. Thank you, Chair Mayron. This concludes my report.
Thank you very much. For the report of the Litigation Review Committee, Regent Tad Johnson, if you could share your report with us.
Thank you, Chair Mayron. The Litigation Review Committee met on March 17th, April 17th, and April 26th, 2025. At each of these meetings, the committee adopted a resolution that authorized the closing of the meeting to discuss matters subject to the attorney-client privilege. Thank you, Chair Mayron. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Next, we will receive the reports of Mission Fulfillment and Finance and Operations. Their reports will note that the items the committees approved on behalf of the board. We will start with Finance and Operations Committee, Regent Hipsch.
Chair Mayron, the Finance and Operations Committee unanimously approved one item on behalf of the board this month. This item was the consent report, which included 2 employment agreements, 1 purchase of goods and services, $5 million and over, and 2 real estate transactions. There are no other action items approved this month. Thank you, Chair Mayron. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. For Mission Fulfillment, Regent Ruth Johnson, if you could share your report.
Thank you, Chair Mayron. Mission Fulfillment Committee unanimously approved 2 items on behalf of the board this month. Those items are approval of the annual promotion and/or tenure recommendations and continuous appointment recommendations. And the consent report, which included approval of new academic programs, approval of changed academic programs, approval of discontinued academic plans, and conferral of tenure for new hires and conferral of emeritus title. There are no other action items approved this month. Thank you, Chair Mayron. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. For the Presidential Performance Review Committee, I will share the report. The Presidential Performance Review Committee, which includes myself and Regents Hipsch and Wheeler, met on April 24, May 6, and this morning, May 9. At each meeting, the committee adopted a resolution that authorized the closing of the meeting. We anticipate delivering a summary of our conclusions at the June Board of Regents meeting. And that concludes that committee's report. Next, we will turn to our special committees. For that, first, a special committee on student affairs, Regent Kenyanya, if you could share the report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Special Committee on Student Affairs did not consider any action items this month. We started off by engaging in a conversation focused on system-wide student activities. Twin Cities Vice Provost and Director of University Recreation, George Brown, and Duluth Director of the Kirby Student Center, Jenny L. Tink, provided information on how student activities enhance the student experience through campus events and traditions, student groups, campus recreation, fraternities and sororities, and student employment. For our second item, the special committee walked through the career preparation resources and outcomes across the system. Duluth Career Center Director Jill Kolosny and Twin Cities Career Services Administration Director Sarah Newberg led a discussion which described the current career support landscape, emerging trends, and the university's vision for building a career ecosystem to support all students across the university. Thank you, Madam Chair. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. And now for the Special Committee on University Workforce, Regent Tad Johnson, if you could share your report.
Thank you, Chair Mayron. The Special Committee on University Workforce did not consider any action items this month, but Brandon Sullivan, Senior Director of Talent Strategy, provided the Special Committee with an overview of the university's approach to evaluating and rewarding employee performance, which generated a robust discussion around the merit pay model, its importance in retaining and attracting employees, and what opportunities exist for those who do not fall within the merit-based pay model. And for our second item, Mary Roman Kuhl, Senior Director of Total Rewards, outlined the university's compensation structures and explained how they have led to improvements in pay. This item built on our first discussion on merit pay and provided an opportunity for special committee members to consider what the university is doing to ensure we are engaging in market-responsive, competitive, and equitable compensation practices system-wide. Finally, the special committee received an informational item from Vice President Horstman in which he reported on the negotiations with labor-represented employee groups and the university is currently engaged in. Thank you, Chair Myron. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Next, we will move to unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business to come before the board? Hearing none. Is there any new business to come before the board? Hearing none. Let me just say before we are going to take up the motion resolution to conduct a non-public meeting, when I shared my remarks earlier this morning and talked about this being the anniversary for three of us who came on the board here, we came on the board with, as you all know, Eileen Herr, and who Regent Tarabi took her position. So just want to make it clear, there were four of us who were elected 6 years ago today. We miss Regent Herr greatly, and we're thrilled that Regent Tarabi was willing to step into the fray. And she will be departing with us, as we all know, at the same time when the legislature or the governor acts to elect new regents. So just wanted to make that acknowledgement as well. All right, as I said, that concludes this part of the board meeting. We are going to entertain the resolution to conduct a non-public meeting of the Board of Regents, and then we will take a short break, and then we will come in and resume that meeting. So Executive Director Steves, if you could read the resolution for us to vote on.
Regents of the University of Minnesota resolution to conduct non-public meeting of the Board of Regents to discuss attorney-client privileged matters. Whereas based on advice of the General Counsel, the Board of Regents have balanced the purposes served by the open meeting law and by the attorney-client privilege, and determined that there is a need for absolute confidentiality to discuss litigation strategy in particular matters involving the University of Minnesota. Now therefore be it resolved that in accordance with Minnesota Statutes 13D.01 subdivision 3 and 13D.05 subdivision 3B, a non-public meeting of the Board of Regents be held on Friday, May 9th, 2025 in the boardroom 600 McNamara Alumni Center for the purpose of discussing attorney-client privilege matters, including the following: 1, Department of Education and Department of Justice investigations; 2, litigation regarding federal agency actions, including AAU versus Department of Health and Human Services and NADHE versus Department of Health and Human Services.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. All right, the motion carries. We will take a brief recess, and if Regents could return to the room here by 1:10 after, that would be wonderful. Thank you.